Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Sadly, I still cannot do live streaming yet until February, but today I am joined by Wolf, who I've had on the show before from New York, and Almos, who I've had on the show before from the UK. And today we want to talk about this Reproductive Health Act that was just passed in New York City. The state of New York. So I'm going to jump straight into it. According to CBN News, quote, "A sad and evil day. New York legalizes abortion up to baby's birthday on anniversary of Roe v. Wade." New York legislators cheered and applauded Tuesday night after the state Senate removed restrictions on late-term abortions, allowing unborn babies to be aborted up until the day of birth. The Reproductive Health Act, passed with a 38-28 vote, was signed into law by New York Andrew Cuomo, Democrat. Today we are taking this is a quote attributed to him, quote, "Today we are taking a giant step forward in the hard-fought battle to ensure a woman's right to make her own decisions about her own personal health, including the ability to access an abortion," unquote, Governor Cuomo said. This was passed 38-28, as I said before. Now, just before I get some opinions, I'll just jump to a video really quickly. This is Northam on the abortion bill. His quote. This is the Virginia governor, of course, and I'll just play what he has to say. This is a 2-minute video, so I'll just get straight into it. Hopefully you guys can hear this, but you might not.
No exception. There was a very contentious committee hearing yesterday when Fairfax County Delegate Kathy Tran made her case for lifting restrictions on third trimester abortions, as well as other restrictions now in place. And she was pressed by a Republican delegate about whether her bill would permit an abortion even as a woman is essentially dilating, ready to give birth. And she answered that it would permit an abortion at that stage of labor. Do you support her measure and explain her answer?
Yeah, and I wasn't there, Julie, and I certainly can't speak for Delegate Tran, but I would tell you first thing I would say, this is why decisions such as this should be made by providers, physicians, and the mothers and fathers that are involved. There are, when we talk about third trimester abortions, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really blown out of proportion. But again, we want the government not to be involved in these types of decisions. We want the decision to be made by the mothers and their providers. And this is why, Julie, that legislators, most of whom are men, by the way, shouldn't be telling a woman what she should and shouldn't be doing with her body.
And do you think multiple physicians should have to weigh in, as is currently required? She's trying to lift that requirement.
Well, I think it's always good to get a second opinion, and for at least two providers to be involved in that decision, because these decisions shouldn't be taken lightly. And so, I would certainly support more than one provider.
All right,
All right, so that was Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, who of course is a Democrat, and yeah, that's his opinion. So I think we're going to see this become widespread. I think this is a slippery slope, and we'll get into that a bit soon. But what were your thoughts on this, Wolf, when you first heard about this?
Well, considering that I live in New York, the the bill 6221 that passed the New York State Senate and signed by Cuomo, that allows women to have abortions up to the 9th month. I was truly, truly saddened and disturbed of where this was heading. And I didn't even know, it hit everyone blindsided because nobody knew about it. But when I woke up this morning, I seen the governor of Virginia that you just played, that video, and I said, oh my God, what they're doing is the progressives are trying to outdo each other on abortion now. So they're all rushing to get the same thing that Cuomo passed. Well, this guy took it a step even further and said, well, we can put this kid to death, the baby to death after it's born. So he's even taken another step further. What's going on in the United States, it seems the progressives are tripping over each other to outdo each other. And like you just stated, I fear we're heading down this road and what they're doing. And we already are, because as soon as the bill was passed in New York State, this governor of Virginia comes out and says, well, I'm going to outdo Governor Cuomo, who's a Catholic, by the way. And we'll have abortions after the baby's born.
Yeah.
So, and my thing is this, we are in a slippery slope, but I think we're already beyond that now, because now there's going to be a cascade of this and it's going to keep going downhill. And,
well, it's infanticide. That's what they call it. You know, the murder of infants. And you can look into the history of Jewish blood libel and child sacrifice, and man, you know, even the harvesting of children's blood that was going on even back in the days of Sabbatai Zevi, and what's even occurring today, even now in the Middle East, where you have Israeli businessmen using public Turkish hospitals to extract the corneas and organs out of Syrian casualties of war. And
well, speaking of Jewish blood libel, the person who sponsored the bill for New York State is Liz Kruger from the 28th District of Upper East Side, who happens to be a Jewess.
Yep, and I've just got it on the screen now. It's on Find Your
Yes,
Senator. Senate Bill S2796, Reproductive Health Act, sponsored by Liz Kruger. And that's, hopefully you guys can see that down the bottom there.
And if you read all the co-sponsors, right, it reads off like a Jewish bar mitzvah.
Yeah, well, I've got that on the screen here. State of New York, 2019 to 2020, regular session, Senate Assembly, pre-filed January 9th, 2019. Now, there's a lot of other names here. I do see a lot of Mexican or South American names. I do wonder if they're Sephardic or communist revolutionaries. But the names up the very top, keeping in mind this isn't alphabetical order. This is just the names they've put up the top who are the most involved. Introduced by Senator Kruger, Jewish. Introduced by M of A. Glick Gottfried, Jewish. Multi-sponsored by M of A. Epstein, Jewish. So, I mean, this is on the government website. This isn't a conspiracy theory.
No, not at all. And before I even looked it up to see who sponsored it, I already knew this is where it was going to lead me. And they'll sponsor it, and they'll get non-whites to go along with them, maybe, crypto Jews. But the main sponsors of this bill were Jewish. And the whole idea of them, I believe it's a Jewish revolutionary spirit, as E. Michael Jones would say, that they're constantly upheaving society with all these like under the veil of women's equality. That's what one of the statements she made as far as this bill is concerned.
Well, it ties into their ideology of Tikkun Olam, healing the world, creating a new world, because they believe their morality and rationality is far superior to that of, the God of the Bible or of any of the Abrahamic gods. But just on that point, Almos, how do you feel about this idea of post-birth abortion. I mean, it's murder, right? Almos?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah. I just
Sorry.
I just wanted your thoughts on this.
Basically, once the sperm gets past a certain stage, then it's a living organism. So you're pretty much killing a baby. There's not much difference between killing somebody who's actually physically in front of you or an infant in somebody's stomach. So I'm quite surprised that somebody would go to this extent to do this. Now, I can understand that if somebody was raped and they wanted to do that based off that scenario, but anybody else who's managed to stay pregnant for a number of months and then decides to do this is quite upsetting to me, because I'm totally against it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what you just said hit the nail right on the head for me, because if you go to, there's a verse in the Bible that talks about exactly what you said about conception being the receiving of a seed, not the giving birth of a child. So if you go to Hebrews 11:11, it says, "Through faith also Sarah received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithfully and who had promised." And there's plenty of other verses like this, like people's names being taken out of the book of life when they die, not being put into the book of life when they live. I mean, it says the very hairs of your head are counted. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, and I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations." So I mean, this explicitly says that, you know, God knew us before we were born, when we were being formed in the belly. I mean, yeah, I mean, even if you look at this from a completely secular point of view, there's a really good, there's a couple of tweets here that touch on this too. Like, for an example, Scott Newman says here, "For those who support the New York abortion law, please explain to me scientifically how a child 5 minutes from being born is different than a child 5 minutes after being born. You must provide a reasonable answer in order to maintain any moral standing whatsoever." I mean, I agree with that. You know, how is it any different? I mean, if you're going with the logic that you're only a living creature after birth, what about people that are born early? I mean, at what point do these progressives, who put their own moral standard above that of objective morality, decide
That is a very valid point there.
Yeah.
A lot of kids are born a lot earlier than they're supposed to.
That's right. Even Mark Vaudry, he says, "Atheists, God is not loving, he kills innocent baby. Atheists, abortion is a woman's right."
I think the earliest a child they've had born is maybe 6 months, or even earlier than that. So you're talking a child can be born a lot earlier than where they're saying they can abort this child. Now, I just wanted to bring out, there was some key points in this bill that we passed by. I wanted to just touch on real quick.
Yep.
They wrote in this, okay, listen to this: abortion may be performed by a licensed, certified, or authorized practitioner. So basically, a non-doctor can perform an abortion. So a lot of people are missing that point. So they're expanding abortions to general, like, practitioners, like a nurse or like an aide that is certified in doing this. So that is a key point people are leaving out. So they're expanding the reach of a doctor now to other people that are not doctors that can perform abortions. And I think that's a key point people are missing on this bill.
Yeah.
You have to read it, and it says it right there. Abortion may be performed by a licensed, certified, or authorized practitioner. Okay, and if people doubt that this is wrong, they should see late-term abortions performed on video, and you tell me if you think this is right, because it's absolutely barbaric what they're going to be doing. And then the governor of Virginia on top of it saying, well, a child can be aborted right after it's born. And this is plain, we're getting into just plain old murder now. It's just strictly murder.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I'll just read this really quickly because this is from Frank Pavone on Twitter. He says, many Catholics are calling for the excommunication of New York State government Cuomo for the abortion law he just signed. As bishops decide that question, the rest of us can do what is in our power, expose the reality of abortion and vote these people out of office. #pro-life, #unborn. Yeah, I agree with him. I mean, this is clearly an actual defiling of the Bible, but even if you look at those verses, I brought up one that was from the Old Testament. I mean, even Jews technically should believe that abortion is wrong, but a lot of them don't, and this just goes to show what people like Dr. E. Michael Jones and many others have been saying all along, that this is neo-Judaism. This is a new form of Judaism defined by the oral law, the Talmud. And even the Talmud, if you read certain parts of it, it dictates that it should be of a higher authority than that of the Tanakh or the Torah, which of course is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. So we have a complete contradiction of what a Jew should believe and what Jews actually do believe today. But this brings us to the point I was making with you, Ice Wolf, before about Tikkun Olam, healing the world.
Well, that's right. I mean, Jews actually think they have an obligation of Tikkun Olam, that they should be healing the world through their vision. So basically, what they feel that should be going on around them, as far as in the societies that we're all living in. And meanwhile, they're only 2% of the United States, but yet they think they should be able to steer our culture a certain way to their vision, which is why we're in a lot of trouble to begin with in the West. We can go through many things. The topic is abortion, but they're behind every Roe versus Wade, 1973, that made abortion legal in the United States. They were behind that. It was all Jewish lawyers. Joe Biden, the vice president of the United States, was on video talking to a Jewish reporter and saying, thank God for Jews, because we wouldn't have gay marriage, abortion. So this Tikkun Olam of healing the world is giving us all these destructive things to our society. And it brings us right to this bill who Liz Kruger, a state senator from Upper East Side of New York, got passed. And she sponsored. And the governor, who is a Catholic, should be excommunicated. And the Cardinal Dolan of New York City basically said, he walked it back and said, well, we shouldn't use this as a weapon. Well, I don't know when a better time is to use excommunication as a weapon for a man who signs a bill that you can murder a child. Because that's what it is. It's murdering a child.
Well, that's the whole point. I believe we just read it before. It was, 38... with a vote 38 to 28. So 38 people voted for this, including New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's a Democrat. And of course the attention is on him because he's the New York governor. And he should be vilified for this, absolutely. But behind this, what we don't see the pro-life activists talking about is in fact that this is not only 100% in line with the postmodernist Marxist agenda of these neo-Jewish activists, if you want to call it that, these revolutionaries, but the bill was actually sponsored and presented by Jews themselves.
That's correct. And a lot of them. And like I said, they ally with the non-whites or crypto Jews, if we don't, maybe Sephardic Jews that are, masquerading as Spanish people, but they align themselves with the non-whites to actually get things passed. And we could see that happening in the United States because there's an alliance, a Jewish alliance with all the non-whites, the homosexuals, and they're actually looking to push down the actual white vote in America and get their whole agenda passed, which I see in the future is like a Bolshevik takeover of the United States.
If I can just come in, there's 2 points. One point being the fact that the Jews tend to use whatever is suitable for them. So currently, like you just pointed out, they're using a non-whites, but when the time is suitable for them where they need to invade a country or whatnot, they'll use the whites. So it's vice versa. In regards to this whole abortion thing, I need to point out something. We're all aware of children sacrifices that have been going on around the world for many, many years now. What guarantees do we have that these children are actually going to be put to this death and not be used for some other means?
Well, it's very interesting you say that, because I was just on a stream the other day, and if you look into some of these organ harvesting state-sponsored departments in the US, they're actually headed up by people like Dick Cheney and Hillary Clinton. So that's a really good point.
Well, Hillary Clinton is a really lovely lady that tends to be very law-abiding citizen, so we won't expect her to do anything wrong. But what I was trying to get at is, if you paid attention to the beginning of Matrix, where everybody is in this little machine and they've been used as like a bit of a battery, what guarantees are there that the child will not then be used to produce blood? And we know that young children's blood tend to have effects on older people to make them feel younger.
Adrenochrome, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I'm not too sure about the actual technical words, but I'm aware that there was a few people that lived above 100 years old that used to go through this blood transfusion. So how do we know that these children are actually going to be put to death like they say they will and not be used as a source of blood?
Well, the adrenochrome that I believe they drink for is a hormone that's released. Like when, for example, you'll see a rabbi sucking the blood from a circumcision that was just performed to suck out the adrenochrome. It's a hormone that's released when a kid is terrified or anybody's terrified.
Yeah. It's
and it gives them what I was referring to.
It's based on
it gives them
isn't it?
Yeah,
I was referring to something else. I think it was what's his name? The one who just died, Rockefeller. He used to go for blood transfusion, and he would get he would pay a very high price to make sure the person who's giving him blood is somebody below the age of something like 18 or something.
Yeah, there's also stem cells, for an example. Obviously, it's a lot more benign now, the process. They don't have to take it from aborted fetal tissue anymore, but they used to. And, you know, I'm still on the fence about that. I don't know enough about it. I'm not a medical scientist or anything like that. But
we're never going to know the answers to this question either.
Yeah, and it is going to get worse. And just to prove that, this is rhavote.com. This is one of the organizations behind it. And look what it says up the very top. Yes, we did it. You know, like they're celebrating this. On January the 22nd, 2019, the New York State Legislature passed the Reproductive Health Act, and Governor Andrew Cuomo signed the bill into law. So yeah, they're clearly celebrating this. But here's the scary part. What's next? There's more to do to ensure New Yorkers can access care and that no patient is left behind. Some of the things that they're trying to do next, because there is no end. It doesn't matter how much you give in to these people. They're going to want to keep taking more and more and more. This is why I'm against accelerationism. Because there is no end in sight with these people. So it says
there is no limits.
Absolutely. These are the things that they're pushing for. No limits, defined by there should be no gestational limits restricting access to abortion care. No reasons, defined by why a person seeks an abortion at any point is none of our business and should not be the basis for a restriction. So they're saying that it doesn't matter if you're doing this for health reasons or if you're using post-birth abortion as a form of you know, contraception. It says here, no prosecutions. We must ensure no persons is prosecuted for the outcome of their pregnancy. No parents. Minors need access to abortion care without parental consent. No personhood.
Jesus.
Fetal personhood laws separate pregnant people from their rights and their autonomy. No maternal mortality. Maternal mortality is a public health crisis, especially among black women, and we need to fix it. No patient left behind. Defined by everybody should be able to access and afford the abortion they want, when they want it, for any reason.
Right, what you were saying before, what's the limits and where they're going to go next? This last thing that you just said, no patient left behind, it sounds very similar to no child left behind, which George Bush put into place regarding schools and the dumbing down of the children.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So you can kind of see where this is kind of going. They'll start here, and before you know it, regardless of what the person's age is, it'll be okay to have an abortion.
Well, we have the proof on our screen right now that this is in fact a slippery slope, that it doesn't stop with just this legislation bill passed. You also sent me an article, Almos, about the future of abortion restrictions in Florida. I'm not going to read the full article here, but I will put this in the description below. In those links, I'll also have the bill that was passed in that description if people want to check that out. But there's serious conversation going on in Florida now. As I said, this is the start of a slippery slope, and I think we're proving that here. And another thing I wanted to bring up was on the 25th of September 2018, we had legislation change here in Queensland being proposed. I'll just read my post that I made back then. Quote, abortion would be allowed on request up to 22 weeks. The legislation would also establish a safe access zone of 150 metres around a clinic to prevent protesters approaching. Queensland state-sponsored murder. Between 10,000 and 14,000 terminations were performed in Queensland each year, with most performed in the first trimester of pregnancy. But now they want to increase the number by making it possible to terminate 22-week-old unborn babies. So yeah, I mean, there's generally about 40 weeks in a 9-month period. So by the 22nd week, the baby is mostly developed and, beyond the halfway mark. And this time the baby would have its lips, its eyes fully developed. If you could see the inside of the womb, you'd be able to spot the fine hair that covers its body, the deep wrinkles in its skin, which, he'll sport until he adds a padding of fat to fill them in. Inside his belly, his pancreas, all of this stuff is developed by that point. And all of that is essential for the production of some important hormones. I mean, the baby is almost developed at this point, and this isn't as bad as what's going on in New York, but I just wanted to demonstrate it's all a slippery slope.
Well, look what they're doing there in Queensland. Now, they're saying you're going to give them an inch, right, if you pass that. And then in a few years, they're just going to go for the whole thing again. You see where this is heading.
Yes.
Right? It's
I agree with. Yeah.
So you pass that in Queensland, up to 22 weeks, right? In a few years, they'll sponsor another bill to say, well, we got to do it up to 9 months because New York's done it, and it's becoming a domino effect in the United States now. Now we have all these governors coming out of the woodwork, like the one from Virginia, saying, oh, we got to do that too. So that's what we're dealing with in America right now. But if you don't think it's going to come everywhere else in the West, you're wrong.
Absolutely. And I think we've demonstrated that this is well and truly a part of Tecum Olam. I mean, even in this instance of New York, we've shown that it was Jews pushing this, but this is coming straight out of the Talmud. This comes straight out of the ideology of Tecum Olam, healing the world, where they put their morality and rationality above that of objective morality. That makes them the postmodernists, that makes them the humanists, essentially that makes them the communists that we're dealing with, regardless of whether they're conservative, left-wing, right-wing. That's what these people are. Now, just before I wrap this up, I just want to give this just quote someone here, Al Goldstein. A lot of you might think this is completely irrelevant, but I just want to show you that this is the mindset behind these perversions of culture and the destruction of the family unit and the breakdown of objective morality. Quote, "The only reason that Jews are in pornography is that we think that Christ sucks. Catholicism sucks. We don't believe in authoritarianism. Pornography thus becomes a way of defiling Christian culture, and as it penetrates to the very heart of the American mainstream, and is no doubt consumed by those very same wasps, otherwise known as white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, its subversive character becomes more charged." Unquote. So there is a hatred of the idea of logos, or the idea of objective morality. I was on a stream the day before yesterday, and somebody said that, the opposite to a Jew's morality is the family unit. That is literally the opposite. And I kind of agree with that. It makes a lot of sense. Now, we are running a bit short on time.
Before you do that, can I ask you to play a short part of a video?
Yeah, okay.
This is the video that I was talking about before.
Apologise for the delay. Australia has the worst internet in the
websites that proclaim that abortion and reproductive rights are authentic Jewish values. We also talked about the Jewish pioneers in the political battle for abortion rights. Jewish women such as Emma Goldman, a radical communist from Russia who was deported by the U.S. government in 1917 and sent back to Russia during the Jewish-led Red Revolution that toppled the Russian Tsar. And Rose Pastor Stokes, another Jewish communist, a reporter for the Yiddish Daily News. Another pioneer in the abortion movement was Gertrude Well, a Jewish socialist in North Carolina. Her cousin was a friend of Pauline Steinem, whose granddaughter, Gloria Steinem, became one of the most radical and influential Jewish feminists of the 20th century.
No, I'm actually really glad you sent that to me, because it just goes.
Yeah, you can just drop it into the description for everybody to watch. It's quite interesting, and when you get deep into it, you realize behind these people there might be a goyim there, but behind a goyim there's a Jew.
Goyim Governor Cuomo, the homo. Hey, guys.
Well, yes, I just wanted to say, in closing, Jews are behind a lot of the inverting of the Bible. So, and that all ties into that revolutionary spirit since the beginning of them putting Christ on a cross. But in closing, I would just like to say to any women out there that are listening to this stream, if you're in a situation where you're thinking about abortion, I would say choose life. Your child will thank you someday. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Wolf. Really appreciate it. I know you're in New York, and I know you were personally insulted to see that this was going on where you live. So I really want to thank you for coming on again. And Almos, I want to thank you for sending those links through to me. And thanks for coming back on again. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me on.
Have a good night, guys.
You too.
All right. Thank you once again. So just remember, guys, if you're not familiar with my channel, if you want to go watch my censored videos that YouTube do not allow, you have to go over to BitChute. I'll put those links in the description below too. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and be sure to share it. Share it around on social media. I'm banned there, so I can't share my own stuff around. Give me your thoughts in the comment section below. Alright, guys. Thanks again. God bless and peace.